Hi guys, it's Sunny Chayes, it's Wednesday, it's Hollywood, and we are going for it on Singing in the Rain. I have been waiting for this interview for quite a few months, and I'm very, very excited to be having it today. And we have the director and producer of a movie that I cannot wait for you guys to see called Dying to Know. And we also have Timothy Leary's son, Zach Leary, with us in studio, and the director, Gay Dillingham, is in Santa Fe, and we're Skyping her in. She was going to be here, but we're doing the second best thing, which is Skyping her in. So what we're going to do is I'm going to not edify these guys ahead of time. We're going to kind of do it all through the show, but they rock, and I love this movie so much. So I just want to get to our conversation. So first, I'm just going to go ahead. John, can we bring on Zach? We're bringing on Zach.
Love that applause. That's great.
I know, it's so, well, you so deserve it.
I want to wake up to that.
That's a good idea. Yeah. We should have that. You know, that's a really good idea.
Every
Our
morning,
phones should do
step
that.
out of bed.
Just like, Yahoo, another day. Let's go for it. Well, speaking of going for it, I want to, just dive right in. So.
Yep.
Gay is floating in the background here, and she'll be listening to everything we're saying, and then we'll bring her in a minute. But I want to first just kind of say that just so much appreciation to both you and Gay for doing this movie. And I love it so much because it is, for you guys to understand, Gay 20 years ago, if we can imagine, was able to go and basically document Timothy Leary 3 months before he passed away, along with Ram Dass, his buddy from Harvard. And many of you know the stories, and we'll get into the story a little bit about how significant and just sort of life-changing the meeting of these two, what they did individually, what they did separately. And so we're going to be talking about the history, the culture, what was going on, passing drug legislation or not, as the case actually was, and many more things. So, and you are the son of Timothy Leary. How cool is that?
Yeah, I guess it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I think you think so.
Yeah, it's been uncool at times, but I think now it's pretty cool.
I can imagine.
I've
known
anything, you have your relationship with it that can go back and forth.
Right. I've known a lot of sons and daughters of, and it definitely has its its perks and it
has its pitfalls. There's no question. But I've already gone through the pitfalls. I've left them behind me.
Well, So I want to thank you for inviting me to the screening that was the 20-year anniversary of your dad's passing away on May 31st.
What a great night that was, wasn't it?
That was such a great night, and just all these people in the audience, and I just felt so, so grateful to be on such an auspicious evening. I could just feel it. I could just feel it in the room, and I just felt the gratitude of watching what he was and going through the journey of this movie.
Yes.
Taking it so deeply for me because, of course, there was a lot of stuff I didn't know. There was a bit that I did, but a lot I didn't. And just so the gratitude and the appreciation for such a soul to bring, what he did.
Well, that night was very, very special. When we saw that the film was coming to Los Angeles, opening on June 17th at the Laemmle, we kind of noticed a month or so, a couple months in advance, that the film was going to be, oh my gosh, this is so close to the 20th anniversary of Tim dying, and he died in Los Angeles. He lived in Los Angeles for the last 20 or so years of his life, more really. And what a great opportunity that was to celebrate his life, because his death was really a celebration. Anybody who was around then, sure, we were sad the moment he died, but everything leading up to that was a celebration of what an incredible life he had. What an incredible incarnation he had. So it was just a great opportunity for us to get together, celebrate, watch the film, bring some family together, and have a good time.
Well, it really was a great way to really mark it and have it be in LA. And again, that's what I love about this movie. And John, get ready to bring in Gay, because I'm going to want to bring her in a sec. The just really understanding the grandness of life and the grandness of the passing. And one thing I love to incorporate into my life as much as possible is ritual.
Yes.
This morning when I was making breakfast, I thought, wow, there's so much ritual I do. And if one of the pieces isn't there, like the special cinnamon from India or the special Himalayan sea salt, I'm a little bit like, rah.
Yeah,
so,
we've been doing that since we came out of the cave. Ritual is such a core part of our tribal existence.
and our connection and our knowing that we belong and everything, and it's so deep in us that and there's so much ritual in this movie that there's so much ritual in that time that I think was sort of the 60s brought a new ritual. The 50s and the 40s and the 30s were really something, and to bring just crack through and bring another deeper ancient ritual into the modern time of the 60s.
The great line that Tim said about the 60s is, in order to understand the 60s, you must understand the 50s. I mean, that is it's a context is everything, and watching the juxtaposition against the 50s is what made the 60s so special, is what made the breakthroughs so profound. Now, millennials today, and even Generation X, people who are younger today, you don't realize, you take it for you take advantage of it, you take it for granted rather. It's part of our lifestyle. Psychedelic culture is woven into our life. All these festivals and rock and roll and wearing your hair long, short, piercings, whatever it is. That was a very new, brand new, brave new world kind of thing back then.
When the musical Hair came out in 1968, and it was, of course, created in around 1965, 66. It was brewing, and with Jerry and Jimmy Ragney, who wrote it, and of course your dad's mentioned in it. Timothy Leary Deary is in one of the songs. You may or may not remember, but that was so. I was a little kid then, but everything was so new about that it was just the nude scene, which was very, very short, but it was it was a shot heard around the world.
Deal, yeah, right.
And I later had some experience with Hairs, and I worked with the people who were in it originally, and they told me the stories of they would go places and they were really like gods, the actors in this musical, because they had really parted the waters with this event that really capsulated the draft dodgers, the burning of draft cards, the dancing like wild people, the rituals all over Hair, and so it was just all, but like you say, it was all new.
It was wide open
And ready for a huge change. And so, John, do we have Gay right here for us?
We have a picture of her, but we don't have the video of her at the moment.
Oh, okay. We're gonna get her. We're gonna figure it out. But in the meanwhile, we're gonna bring her on because we definitely want her to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, hi, Gay Dillingham. Woo! The beautiful and amazing Gay Dillingham.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And we're going to get the actual video up in a minute, but we do have a beautiful photo of you. And I want to let everybody know that Gay is the director, the producer, and the videographer who 20 years ago captured this. Just for all of us, it's a time capsule. It's a treasure that you created. And so join our conversation. I hope you've been listening to us up until now.
I have been. Thank you.
Yay.
Right.
So dive in, girl. Come on. Bring it.
Hi, Zach. Can you hear me?
Oh,
all
yeah.
right?
We got you.
We're all here.
We got you.
Great. Thanks, Zach, for being there. It's been real great journey here with Zach. When I met him when we were doing the film, and he's now part of helping with the social media and everything. So, and thank you, Sunny, for doing the radio show. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. It's been a little hectic, but I'm coming into LA tomorrow for our big premiere on Friday.
Fantastic. And so I want to just have you add to our conversation as far as really the importance of bringing this to the people, bringing it to the peeps, just the whole context of this and history, sociology, the drug culture, what it is, what it isn't. I like we talked about yesterday, I'm very happy to do a little myth busting. So I guess my first question to you actually is, and then you can ask me questions too, like we were talking about, go for it, is, how fantastic this was 20 years ago that you just had the idea of capturing this moment. You were a young babe at the time. Or a babe in the woods.
I was young when I started. I was young when I started this film.
Mm-hmm.
I was
and you still are
30 years old. Yeah, so it started very spontaneously. We had a moment with friends when Timothy had announced in the media he was dying, and that he was going to do it creatively. One of his lines is, "I'm going to give death a better name or die trying." So I always appreciated his sense of humor. And so we reached out to him as well as Ram Dass, and realized, knowing their profound relationship. I didn't know as much of their relationship at the beginning, but that is indeed what caught me and what held my attention. So that is the real frame of the film, is the portrait of their relationship. So started out spontaneously, but clearly over 20 years got deep into me and really let it go. Kept coming back to it. I obviously didn't work on it for 20 years straight, but I would come back to the material because there was so much juice there, and it filled so many of my questions. So in some ways, I also feel this film made me, as well as me making this film.
Well, one thing I'd like, thank
you know,
you. One thing I'd like to do for our people who may or may not really understand the relationship, the connection, and a little bit of the history. So, who wants to dive in with just kind of laying the groundwork about who Ram Dass was and Timothy Leary and Harvard and all of that? Just a quick kind of thumbnail for our peeps so they have
Well,
that.
I almost feel like neither of us should answer that because you should go see the film and find out for yourself.
Well, that is true. Okay, so then I'll brief
kidding.
and go for it.
I mean,
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. So in the early '60s, in 1960, Timothy Leary and a very young professor named Richard Alpert were professors at Harvard in the School of Psychology, and Timothy was a little bit older. He had previous experience and wrote a defining book of the time, at the time, called The Interpersonal Diagnosis of Personality, which was really helped to lay the groundwork, the foundational groundwork for group therapy and the dynamics within that. But then a tragedy occurred in his own life. His wife at the time committed suicide on his 35th birthday, and he jettisoned himself and his two children to Italy. And he was a little bit lost, not quite sure what he was going to do, how he was going to resume his career. Then David McKellen, the head of Harvard, the head of the department at the time, recruited him, brought him to Harvard, and he started his work there. And down the hall was this guy named Richard Alpert, and they just kind of started working together, and they immediately formed a little bit of a friendship. But there was a little bit of a seniority, older brother, whatever metaphor you want to use, wise sage student kind of thing, because Timothy was older. He was 11 years older. And then quickly, not too long after that, it didn't take very long at all, actually, for psilocybin to be introduced into the equation there. And you have to understand that at that time, introducing psilocybin or any compound at that time, it was not
hallucinogenic.
It was not how we think of it now. It was a pharmaceutical. It was a therapeutic agent. It was a neuropsychotropic therapeutic agent that was used for therapy. It was not considered a drug, a big, scary, wild, grow your hair long and freak out and with a light show kind of drug. It was not. That was not the context. So they went into that and they did that, and right away. Timothy said, I learned more in 4 hours than I had in the previous 20 years of psychotherapy.
Meaning 4 hours
of the trip.
Right, exactly.
Yes, of the trip.
Right.
And that began the work. And the psilocybin, it changed into using LSD as the compound a little bit later on. And the world was never the same.
Right. And then just for you guys, and it's a long story, but Richard turned into, at one point, and most of you know that story, Ram Dass. So
that was
why,
later. That was
and
7 years
that was much later.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why when we talk about Timothy Leary and Ram Dass, that's
Yeah.
just to connect all the dots for you guys, for you young peeps who may not know.
Right. Well, what the film is, the film really captures so many amazing elements and tells so many stories about the psychedelic movement, the friendship between the two of them, the death process as Timothy was dying, and also their respective journeys. What happened to Timothy and what happened to Ram Dass. Timothy went into mapping the mind and the intellectual process of expanding consciousness and finding, however it is you view God or you want to talk about God. But he went through the mind. Richard Alpert went east and discovered his guru named Karoli Baba and found the map for consciousness that way, through the heart. So they went through different paths, but ultimately. Yeah.
Well, that's so. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you're bringing up, and Gay, I know that you can talk to this too, is just really the process of discovery. You're so beautifully explaining that. For most people, and at one point, I even want to ask John, our engineer, a little bit about kind of what he knows and what he doesn't know, because he's younger than me, and I was younger than what was actually going on at the time. But really, understanding. Now we look back at LSD, and again, like we were talking about hair and all of these things. Now it's in our culture. I look at the young girls who are 18 and they're wearing, fringe purses and all these kinds of things. I'm like, girls, that is not a new fashion. Let me just tell you, and daisies and all that. It's just kind of ubiquitous now. And what the actual discovery was, what the actual process of scientific, literally discovering what these different products or what do I want to say, chemicals would do to the human chemical makeup
Yeah.
in the interaction of all that, which was very, very documented. I mean, this was not just some, casual thing. It was very, very well documented. And
That's
so
right.
this was a journey that was a historical, in my opinion, historical, sociological, and, definitely scientific and medical journey.
Yes.
So, Gay, dive in. We're just chatting away here.
So it might be audio and not video. I'm just trying to get clear because I can't tell what's happening exactly.
You're on video now.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
hi everybody.
Hi.
Anyway, so set and setting, I think one of the real contributions these two gentlemen, psychologists, made to our generation was to make people aware of set and setting. Know what drug you're taking, the state of your own mind, the state of the conditions that you're in, because these chemicals had also been used for mind control and warfare with the military prior to in the 50s and through the 60s. So these two guys really did make a difference to our generation. One of the things I say is whether you knew them or not, they changed your life. And they certainly changed mine.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in 65, so did not live through the early Harvard period. But, I do know part of my personal story and the reason I was so attracted to this film and held on to it for the story for 20 years, and certainly the relationship with Ram Dass. A little more on Ram Dass because we talk more about Tim. I just want to give a little background to him.
Mm-hmm.
He, when he left the East Coast, went to India, met his guru named Curly Baba, and then got his name, Ram Dass, which means servant of God. And when he came back to the States, he also was very instrumental in, he started the Dying Project, which helped midwife the dying through, the dying states. And so I say that because I lost a brother when I was 17 and he was 20. And that was the first time I actually ever heard Tim's name. My brother was getting in trouble for driving 2 hours to the city on a school night to see Tim after he got out of prison. But that death in my life really kind of brought me to my knees earlier than I think I would have otherwise, and helped me start waking up a little earlier in my life than I would have otherwise, I think. And at that time, also some sacred medicine really helped me through those moments in trying to find my way back. And what happened for me when I met these two men, I really came in through what I would call the death door, because these two were having such a fresh, unique, and important discussion about a topic, death and drugs, that are very taboo. We don't get to generally have very candid conversations, even though we want to. We're dying to have these conversations. So I put together the biographies and the history and so forth to explain who these guys were that were having such an interesting take on these taboos. And they wrote the Psychedelic Experience, which was a book based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which helped people go through a psychedelic session in a meaningful, conscious way and understand those death states, those bardos. And so what I kind of like to say is this is an inspiring movie about death, because it's most everybody that leaves says they're more inspired, they're less afraid. So I got a bit of pushback trying to call the film Dying to Know, because people thought I would turn them off. But that's exactly why I made this film, because we are dying to have these conversations. So it's not just about the death of the body at the end of this particular, when the spacesuit wears out. It's really all the little ego deaths that we can and should go through to have more full lives, to understand the preciousness of this human life. So it's a very long-winded way of saying these two men, I had been handed media caricatures of these men through my media culture. And a lot of my process over 20 years was just reconciling who I actually met, particularly Tim on his deathbed, and being able to see him through this beautiful lens of Ram Dass, which was through Ram Dass's love, gave me a new perspective on Tim. And I feel like a lot of people that see the film are also seeing that, seeing both of these men in a different light, and seeing their context in history and the
Yes.
arc of their lives. We have 80 years of footage from beginning to end of this film.
Wow.
So it's a pretty big, deep look, and hard even to get it all into 90 minutes. But
Well, I think you did a beautiful job, and a couple things I was thinking about when you were talking was one, when I was watching the movie and really seeing the love that these two have, and also understanding, right now in our kind of land, we have a lot of disagreement, and then that sort of creates animosity and separation. And I'm seeing with these two that they definitely had a lot of things that they disagreed about, and like kind of chokes me up to say this, but they had such a profound love for each other. So I feel like that's really it's a beautiful example of how we can disagree and still profoundly respect the other and love the other. And so, guys, when you see the movie, bring that into your consciousness too, because I feel like we need a little bit of that. Or we don't need it, but it would be good to recognize that there is that chance, there is that possibility. So thank you, for that. And also, again, the taboo, aspect of life, I think, again, with myth busting and bringing things, to a really true place where we can have genuine connection and genuine even truth with ourselves. What is just, let's go for it and be real about any of the things that are in this movie. There's so much that even at one point I want to talk today at some point about the drug culture and decriminalizing and what Timothy Leary, we will balance this out, I promise, Gay, with Ram Dass and Timothy Leary, but also with him speaking to Ted Kennedy in Congress. And so I definitely want to get into that, and then also with Ram Dass, for my peeps who are listening from San Rafael and all my friends in Marin. Remember how we used to go see him? And you were saying San Rafael. I thought it was, or San Anselmo. I thought it was San Rafael. But after his stroke, he used to just have these really cool, kind of gatherings with the pillows, and he was helped in, and he was just, it took a little while to get used to his new voice.
Yeah, right.
But
sure.
then we just were in such, bliss. And so I feel so honored that I was able to, hang around him a bit.
It's amazing now that I go to the retreats in Maui pretty regularly, and that there are so many people discovering Ram Dass even today, not even knowing his old voice.
Wow.
Yeah,
There you go.
So many young people showing up and discovering him for the first time, and just being around that presence.
Well, and again, the
Beautiful.
truth about that, which is, you can have an ailment with the body, and that beautiful spirit is still there, and that's
it's even more so than ever. Yeah, he shines very brightly right now.
And so Gay, I don't know if you want to chat a little bit about the awesomeness of being able to, again, kind of myth bust and understand, like you were saying, setting as far as really the journey of. We started with alcohol in our country, where people where it was illegal and people were drinking God knows what, and so the fact is that the culture of the world has been one of playing around with substances and getting other reactions, whether it be munching on a root or smoking a whatever. It's something that it seems like a human urge of some kind, and so it's here to stay, is I guess my point.
Well,
Yes.
and we all know that. Famously, both heroin and cocaine were in the Sears and Roebuck's catalog in the late 19th century, and used as compounds, medicinal compounds, and what grew the opiate addiction that kind of grew out of the Civil War, because it was the first time morphine was used, but they were over the counter substances, and it wasn't until the Harrison Narcotics Act of 1906 did our whole perception change. So that's what, 110 years,
right? And then the war on drugs, of course, and then
yeah.
also like actual cocaine in Coca-Cola, and
but it's only been 110 years.
Isn't that amazing?
We've changed our up until that point. these compounds were part of everyday life.
I mean, even
Yeah.
cigarettes, doctors prescribed them for calming the nerves in the 50s.
Right.
These are the things. But you know what? We learn, we find out. I mean, we used to think sugar was okay. And now, in my opinion, I think
right.
it's like sort of the worst thing we can take for ourselves. But anyway,
Yeah.
so
Can I just
jump,
jump in real quick?
please
Because
dive in.
I just want to mention that Dr. Andrew Weil is in the film and plays a very interesting role that most people wouldn't imagine. So come see the film. But he's was very instrumental. He was part of why Richard Alpert was fired, because he was a graduate. He was an editor and a writer for the Crimson, the Harvard Crimson. But he also was in the film and is able to opine on some of these medical issues around drugs. And he wrote a book called The Natural Mind, which basically says, as humans, we have a natural inclination to alter consciousness and explore consciousness. And criminalizing, obviously, has been a disastrous. The war on drugs has been disastrous. Victimless crimes, this is medical, this is not a criminal issue. And when you do make something illegal like this is where it goes underground and people make money and so forth. So in our events around the film and the conversations around the film, we've invited in some really important national groups, international groups. One is Drug Policy Alliance. Another is MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, because the research has been, there's been a lot more research in more recent years that's very important, whether it's using psilocybin, which is the mushroom for treating addiction, using some of these substances to deal with end-of-life anxiety. Michael Pollan has written a really great summary for New Yorker called The Trip Treatment. And so we're bringing in scientists. Dr. Charlie Grobe will be with us Saturday night in LA. He's done a lot of the research at UCLA. So the time is now, and we need to change these laws, and we are starting to change these laws, and we need to understand what's underneath our addiction. So a crisis of meaning, it's a lack of rites of passage, and these are the conversations we get into after the film, and it's been so rewarding when a 17 or 18-year-old with Be Here Now under their arm comes in and is sitting next to a 70 or 80-year-old, and we're having these incredible conversations. Or a parent brings a kid or grandkid in. So, because the younger kids aren't necessarily knowing to come, but when they do, they love it. And it opens a whole dialogue intergenerationally.
Well, Gay, I want to really, again, thank you for the way you crafted this film, because, again, when I first heard about it, I thought it was really going to be one of these sort of docudrama or documentaries with just sort of Ram Dass and Timothy Leary chatting, and frankly, that would have been enough for me for 90 minutes, fine, dandy, I'm coming. And yet, in addition, there is such a context of, again, like we were saying, the history, the sociology, the science, the exploring, the just the whole journey and the arc and the context of where all this sort of came from and where we are now. So I think it is, I really, while I was watching the movie, I was just ticking away like, oh, I want to tell this person, that person. Like there were like 20 people I was thinking I want to have, I think they would love, I can't think of anybody who would not, because it is really something that, if you're alive now in the world, it is relevant to you. I mean, I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to say that. I think, and it's super, super entertaining. And there was not a minute where I was like, looking at my cell phone or I was engaged fully the whole time.
What you just said is a whole other component of the film, which is equally important. As we said at the beginning of this show, this film tells so many different stories: the story of the death and dying process, the psychedelic revolution, but the cultural revolution. Why you say it's just as important now as ever? The cultural revolution and the importance that these two men had on our culture even today. A lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't.
Right.
It's just so what they did. It just changed everything.
It really did. And go ahead, Gay.
I just want to say, and Tim really paid the price for less than half an ounce of grass. He got a 35-year sentence. It was then reduced, but he was the first one of the first casualties, if not the first casualty
of the war on drugs. Yeah.
And he spent almost 4 years in prison, 2.5 in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
It's a cautionary tale as well.
Yes.
He somehow, sowed some of the seeds of his own karma there. But that's a lot more to get into, clearly.
Well,
That's a
But
whole
you're
other
right,
show.
we're not being pigeonholed in the psychedelic. We're really not being pigeonholed in the psychedelic. We've opened.
no.
Yeah.
No, and when you were speaking about the war on drugs, I mean, again, I think that's something that's really, really important, because what the conversation is now with Drug Policy Alliance, it's working extremely hard to end the war on drugs and decriminalize marijuana specifically, but all
Yeah.
drugs, and many things are coming from them, and like you say, maps and that. Is that the truth of the matter is that what I notice when I chat with people, they're like, oh, people are going to be smoking marijuana everywhere. I'm like, do you see hookah smoked everywhere or cigars? I mean, no, there's going to be, and this is the
Well,
point. There'll be
yes.
regulation. They'll, what we're getting will be safe. People will be, there's a whole infrastructure that is being created for this, guys. So don't be afraid of legalizing marijuana.
Well, it's all drugs. I mean, the war on drugs, right? When you hear with the opposition to the war on drugs, and it's been this way since the Nixon era,
70s, right.
since the Nixon. What's the number one thing that they all say? The children. What about the children?
12-year-olds.
We're going to put the children in danger. Oh my
Yeah.
God, we can't expose the children to these drugs, and that's always the soundbite. So what all that does is tell us the lesson from that is education,
Of course.
demystification, putting the truth
Totally.
out there rather than perpetuating this lie about what it is these things do.
And the
you know?
safety element. Go ahead, Gay. Like, I think of the
safety
alcohol and
element,
how many
yeah.
people died from just literally drinking, like rubbing alcohol and not having it regulated.
During Prohibition. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you. Yeah. And so this is the same. It's like when things are taboo or they are not allowed, they do have an element of the mystique and people wanting to get at them, and so the regulation makes all kinds of sense, and the demystifying also, and the education. And Gay, come on in. Join.
Just to say, this really dangerous phenomena that's been going on, where they're manipulating the molecules just ever so slightly to stay ahead of the law, so that it's apparently legal. But these are very dangerous chemicals, calling themselves or mimicking themselves as marijuana, LSD, or ecstasy, or any of these other things. So these kids get these chemicals, many of them made in China and distributed. That's killing our children, and
Yeah.
it's so there's so many unintended consequences of this drug war, and thank God there are some real groups and action now. So there's a lot of education to take place, and we have to get underneath our crisis. And I just want to say that this film was not meant to answer all the questions so much as allow them to be asked, whether it's a personal spiritual question or our political question of our drug policies.
Well,
I'm finding.
Go ahead. I'm so sorry. Carry on.
People are it's amazing. People do not leave the theater. We hang out, we have these great conversations.
So true. Well, one thing that you're saying that just came to my mind when we're talking about the children is, I love my children, and I
Sure,
love,
of
and
course.
there's a whole, gosh, they're our future, all that stuff. And my feeling is that, okay, if we're going to be talking about the children, then let's talk about the children. Let's get real. Because again, children, people, humans, don't do anything unless there are other components that are part of it. So, it's not like, oh, well, marijuana will be legal and everyone's going to, it's like, what is going on in the whole context of that child's life, and and all that. And I don't want to sound like an old 50s
it's
person, but
parenting, yeah.
it's parenting. It's also the balance, and it's also the education of understanding. And that's what I appreciated that Timothy Leary did, and Ram Dass in those days of understanding what these chemicals could do and the benefits of them, and so that people can choose, just like if they're going to choose, kale, or they're going to choose, sushi. Like
it's also
come on.
It's also the culture of rebellion as well. I mean, if you tell a teenager not to do something, what are they going to do?
Right.
They're going
Always.
they're going to do it.
Right.
So the culture of rebellion is we have to change the conversation.
Well, and the teenage thing, absolutely. But I'm thinking of people, 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, 80s, whatever. It's like if you, there are many new things happening all the time for all people who are still alive, like even for my age.
Yeah.
So it's like if something's really awesome and something can help me with my spiritual journey, or, add to the joy of my life, getting amazing massages or adding salt to my whatever. I mean, anything that enhances my journey. Come on, I want to do it.
Have you spent time in virtual reality yet?
Well, I want to,
go.
and I'm a little afraid to. But to be honest, I am.
Same
I'm
conversation.
I
Yeah.
feel like I've done everything except sensory deprivation tanks and,
Oh, they're great.
you know, and screaming, you know, in the streets. But I've done a lot of other stuff. But no, I want to do that. But that's
Yeah.
the point. It's like, can't we, you know, just understand that, you know, where the benefits are? And
Yeah.
again, like the scientific aspect of set and setting being safe, you know, just like you do anything safely and you don't do something recklessly.
But we're seeing we are seeing a huge shift in consciousness now, especially. I mean, it's really thanks to the
An acceptance,
to
right?
the transformational festival culture that really started with Burning Man, but now that has splintered off into. I mean, there are.
It probably started with hair, but I mean,
No,
you know,
but
the
I mean,
idea of actually
but
doing
what-
it physically. Yeah.
Well, it actually really started with the Grateful Dead, with creating transformational traveling festivals that created a set and setting for on a mass level. Then that morphed into Burning Man, and then now that has morphed into. I mean, there are 30, 40 transformational festivals a year now, which provide set and setting, which have on-site medical resources in case something goes wrong, and it's amazing what's going on. It's a great time to be young.
We're alive.
We're alive.
Thank you, Zach. Because you know the kind of Uber piece here, and these festivals are like, thank God, contained rites of passage and structured, and
Yeah.
that is really what we're missing. Whether it's end of life rites of passage or adolescence, you know, us using and misusing drugs,
Right.
is all. If we don't make our rites of passage conscious, it will become unconscious, and that's how we're losing our kids and having you know, surprising or unwanted deaths. And you know, I think part of my brother's death too was a unconscious rites of passage. A male at 20 years old driving his car on a mountain road, or you know, young girls with anorexia, or you know, there's a number of things. So we really have to step in and get conscious about these very important windows in our development spiritually. And these guys really spoke to that.
And you know,
Yes,
and I
yes.
have to add to that too. It's like, you know, changing the cultural conversation, which, you know, which is a great thing about the transformational festival culture, what this film talks about, and what we're seeing, you know, overall with the world's biggest issues now. I think no matter what side of the fence you're on politically or ideologically, everybody can agree there are some very big problems facing our culture right now, whether it's climate change, whether it's you know, Christianity versus Islam, whatever it is. So we can agree. I think we can now agree that wasting our time and resource talking about marijuana is just a waste of time. We have much bigger things to talk
So
about.
agree.
We have to talk about what's really going on. Plants going out of the ground that get you high. It's like, okay, we've been through this hysteria. Let's
Oh
talk
my
about our
gosh.
systemic things that can really fix us and heal us.
Exactly.
You know?
And by the way, I want to just step in and say, because I realize that I want to again remind everybody that we are talking to Gay Dillingham and Zach Leary, and the movie is Dying to Know, and it is.
we got to plug the theaters. We,
We
haven't done that
need
yet.
to plug this a little bit more.
So the
I've been
movie
such a
is it opens Friday night at the Laemmle Royal in West LA, and it's playing multiple shows per day there. And for the first week of its engagement, there will be a special speakers and facilitating a community discussion with Gay, and sometimes myself after the 7:10 p.m. show. We have Duncan Trussell, Charlie Grove, Taryn Southern, all sorts of great people. And the film also opens on Saturday, June 18th at the Pasadena Laemmle and the Claremont Laemmle as well.
Cool.
So
And
check
then
the
there'll
Laemmle
be,
website
and
for
because
tickets.
this show
Yeah.
goes all over the place, we want people to know, and then they'll be again hearing it Monday, you know, it goes out, that I want people to know that they can go to the website and see the different screenings that are around the country,
Yep.
and really catch this. And the place to see it is in a movie theater, the old-fashioned way, with
Absolutely.
a community of people. And let's just do that, people. Let's gather in our tribe and, you know, and do it, as I say, the old-fashioned way. It's such a difference to do it that way. It's not for the iPhone. And Gay, is there anything else that you want to say as far as promotion? And we have time for, you know, more chatting and stuff, but we have about 10 more minutes. And I also want to at some point ask our engineer, John, who's younger, if he knows anything about any of this. I mean, do you, like, is it okay with you guys, Gay and Zach, if I ask John, like, just kind of weigh in here?
Does John think we're crazy?
John, like, what do you know? I mean, do you know what we're even talking about?
Not exactly. I just I have seen quotes from Ram Dass many times on Facebook as memes
Like,
and things
"Be
like
here
that.
now"
Yeah,
is him.
exactly. Yeah, but as far as no, not really. So
Wow,
I'm learning.
see-
Yeah.
And
Is it intriguing?
Yeah.
Are we doing a good pitch?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it is. You know, I think I'm thinking more about like our generation in terms of the trend, these festivals and so forth that you're talking about. I'm thinking more of like EDM.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
The EDM.
The EDM movement, yeah.
The EDM movement and the experiments that go on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that wild? So John is, can I say your age, John?
Yeah, you can.
So you're 40, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So he's 40, and it's like we're kind of leaving him in the dust here a little bit. So what do you think about that, Gay? He's only a dinky bit older than or younger than you. So do you have any questions, either for John or me?
Well, John, I was just going to say if I combine these two guys like philosophy and down to their essence, and they had a lot of good things to say, but I would say be here now and think for yourself with unconditional love. That's Leary and Ram Dass's philosophy kind of put together. But I really love it when young people come, because it's really a part of history that certainly I didn't know. That's why I spent so much time unpacking it. And we are repeating ourselves. So as they say, if you don't understand history, you're going to repeat yourself, and we are, and it's getting worse. So the whole game's consciousness, as we know, and we need to understand how that emergence and consciousness back in the 60s was put down, how it was sabotaged, and how, Leary was scapegoated. And, it's important to, kind of understand, because we are repeating ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that again, that's one of the reasons I love doing this show, is to bring people like you guys on who are bringing something that people don't necessarily know or think they know, and like I believe it was Mark Twain who said, "It's not what we think we know." Or it's not what we know that hurts us, it's what we think we know that's not correct that is, damaging, and I'm paraphrasing. And I think that's really true, and that's what we, work on a lot with this show, is to kind of bring to you guys what, perhaps unpack some stuff and get underneath it enough to ask questions of ourselves. And, again, going forward, looking at community, looking at other people who maybe do something differently than we do, but not demonize them.
So what's the difference between DMT and LSD and all of those different things?
Well, they're just different types of compounds, different types of drugs.
And then I'm hearing that
Agents.
DMT is like a spirit molecule.
Well, a couple things about DMT. First, it stands for dimethyltryptamine. There are a few versions of it. One is called 5-MeO and DMT-N, which 5-MeO actually comes, the organic root of it comes from the toad, the toad slime, the famous toad slime, and it lasts only 15 to 20 minutes. And yes, there's a movie called DMT, the Spirit Molecule, and it's very. There's a modern psychedelic pioneer named Terence McKenna, who basically, I guess philosophically, the quickest way to talk about it is that what it is we think of God, or think of our DNA, or think of our evolution, can be encapsulated into these journeys, as if our actual evolutionary thumbprint is within this.
One thing,
and it's partially true.
one thing
Yeah.
that, thank you for asking that question, John. Go ahead, Gay.
It's already a chemical that's in our brain, so
Yes.
in some ways.
In some ways, yeah.
Well, one of
Yeah.
the things that thanks for that question, John. One of the things that I noticed when I was watching the movie, and then my sister, who has done LSD, mentioned after, is that, a lot of the things that we're learning about in the spiritual world right now and in the scientific world with, many, many people like Gene Houston and Deepak Chopra and all these people who are doing brain studies and coming forward, Dr. Bruce Lipton, is that what we think we see and everything, we think this table is solid, but it's really not.
it's
And,
not, yes.
our body is 70% water, but it's really 99, because the other 30% is another, 27% water, or whatever. So what we think we see is not really at all reality. And
Yes.
when my sister was watching this, she said, what happens is you really doing things. And again, this is not to, romanticize taking drugs, but to realize that, working with the brain that way, that we really can see more, sort of like a microscope or sort of like a telescope or sort of like, other things get activated in our brain that we otherwise have
the drugs are just, this is just this is a conversation about methods. The method is irrelevant if you choose meditation, yoga, whatever spiritual path that you go on. The
fasting,
the outcome is usually the same, and that is whatever you think reality is, that's not it.
Reminds me of Alice in Wonderland.
Well,
That's
totally.
right.
That's the thing. John, we're going to get tickets for
go,
you, by the way.
Yeah.
We're getting tickets for John to see the movie, right, guys?
That's right.
So, Gay, we have like 4 minutes just to let you know.
Okay, I just wanted to add that many, many people that have never done a psychedelic are coming to this film and really enjoying it. So
including
you
me.
don't have to be in that camp. And, one of the things in terms of the history that I was fascinated by is Tim and Ramdas both, and particularly Tim in his Senate hearing footage, was really advocating these are strong tools. They're not for everybody. They should be licensed. You should have, go through physical, psychological, and mental, criteria. Well, make sure you're set to go, and have somebody with you. This is not something to take lightly. So,
thank you. Yes. Go ahead, Gay.
Well, let's carry on.
I was thinking about when you were saying that, as I was thinking that in America, especially, we take a lot of medications all day long. And people are prescribed, and you go to a doctor, and they weigh you, and they figure out what your dosage is, and all of that. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't, as we all know. It's like, whoop, that one was, okay, well, we'll try another one. So, this is at that time, especially, I think Timothy Leary was working with, when he was discussing with Ted Kennedy in the congressional hearings, was really laying this out and again, not demonizing it and explaining it in a way that would be the same as if a doctor was talking about some sort of, medication that people use right now, an antibiotic or whatever.
And the premise goes, you cannot say that there's a war on drugs when you could go out and buy alcohol or get Oxycontin prescribed to you.
Exactly.
It's not an accurate statement. To put out there. There is no war on drugs.
Or go to CVS or whatever and see what things you can buy for $5.
You can get Sudafed now without showing your ID.
That's
really?
right. Mm-hmm. There's a war on consciousness. Those are very different things. So, yeah.
I wanted to add something about, I did some interviews for Hefter Institute, which is one of the institutes that privately, none of this, very little is funded. We need to get more government funding to really understand these things. But for Hefter Institute, I interviewed a middle-aged woman, mother of two, and with 2 psilocybin, the mushroom sessions, and psychotherapy. And this went on over a 6 to 9 month period. And I interviewed her a year and a half later. She cured herself of alcoholism. And this is standard what really goes on because she got underneath why she was even drinking.
That's right.
Well, I appreciate that. And one thing I was telling you, Gay, earlier that I'm reading this book on Mary Fisher's, her autobiography. And some people may know that she was a white, wealthy, very connected Republican who came out in 1992 at the convention saying that she had AIDS, and she sort of became the poster child for AIDS, not that she wanted to, and she's still living with it today in Sedona and is a beautiful artist. And again, when she talks about her journey with that and just the support in America and kind of what's gone on with that, legalizing this and that and all of the journey with that is really, again, the light has been unshone on that now, and so it's, a lot of it's still going on and we don't know. So, again, demonizing the other is just not a good idea, and she really felt that. She said she got cancer, and she felt the community came around her. She had AIDS, and she was a leper. So, and John's telling us we have 2 more minutes, so I want to. That's why I'm talking faster. Okay. So anyway, I want to remind everybody that this is Singing in the Rain, and follow me on the Twitter and the this and the that, and you know how to do all that stuff. And DYING TO KNOW.com, right? Or DYINGTOKNOW.movie.com.
Yes.
Yeah. So spelled out just like that.
And showtimes and tickets can be had there. Yep.
Cool. And I want to also thank you guys. And I know, Gay, you're going to be coming out and being here. And I want you guys to know that Zach actually has a podcast called It's All Happening. So I really want to check that out. And I also want to let you guys know that there's a really amazing art festival that's going on this weekend. And it's actually called the Peace Project. And I love this art festival because, like we were talking about those. And a percentage, I don't know exactly what it is, but sales go to their Peace Project, and they're doing beautiful things around the world. And, again, I think that's what we're sort of really moving into that, I feel, in doing what we do and knowing that we can have resources and all of that, and we can share them, and we can, pay it forward. And we're just I feel hopeful. I feel like we're in a new time, and that's why I want to,
You're here.
Yes, here. Let us clink our filtered water with our metal straws. If you could not see, that's what we're drinking here, Gay. And so we have like 1 minute, I think. So, Gay, I'm going to let you have the last word, and I'm going to, because yes, I'm going to. So go for it, girl.
Well, come to the Lemley Theaters. It's a wonderful community theater, and this is what I call our modern campfire, where we get to tell our stories and look at our past and contemplate our futures together. And we're just going to have some great conversations this week. Our website, DYINGToKnowMovie.com, will have all the speakers and times, and you can buy tickets from there, or you can go straight to Lemley. Mm-hmm. And if we do well, let's show up in the first week, because if we do well, we'll get held over and be able to go to some of the other theaters all over, around LA. And
will there be a national release, or do we know that yet?
Yeah,
so there will be a national. So if you guys are hearing this show, later with the podcast and on YouTube and stuff, just don't feel like you missed the boat. You can still jump on board.
Sign up for our mailing list. It'll come to a city near you.
People, get ready. There's a train coming. Jump on it. So until next time, I have to say bye-bye to Zach.
Thanks
and
for having
us. Give Santa Fe a big hug for me. And until next time, remember, we have the power of one. Let's use it. Bye for now.
Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's UBNradio.com.